The female CEO had spent her entire life building walls around her heart, but on the night she lost her mansion, her company, and nearly everything she thought defined her, she had nowhere to go except the small home of a poor single dad she barely knew. 30 days later, the same woman who once called that house a temporary nightmare stood in its doorway with tears in her eyes and quietly called it home. Victoria Hale was 38, the CEO of one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the city. Her face appeared on business magazines, investors waited for her decisions, and employees whispered that she could walk into a room and make everyone straighten their backs without saying a word. She lived in a glass-walled penthouse, drove a luxury car, and had never worried about whether there would be enough money to pay the electricity bill. But behind all that success was a woman who had learned very young that depending on people was dangerous. Her father had abandoned her family when she was a teenager, and her mother had spent years working herself sick. Victoria had promised herself that she would never again be vulnerable enough for someone to hurt her. Then one corporate scandal changed everything. A trusted business partner secretly manipulated company accounts and disappeared with millions, leaving evidence designed to make Victoria look responsible. While investigators examined the company, her accounts were temporarily frozen, her penthouse was tied up in the legal proceedings, and the board forced her to step away from her position until the truth could be uncovered. For the first time in 20 years, Victoria had no control over what happened next. Her lawyer arranged temporary accommodation through an emergency housing program connected to one of the company's charitable foundations, but there was a complication. Because of the investigation, the arrangement could not place her in a luxury hotel or another executive property. She needed somewhere private, inexpensive, and secure for 30 days. That was how Victoria ended up standing outside a modest 2-story house on a quiet street, staring at a peeling blue door while rain soaked the sleeves of her expensive coat. The home belonged to Daniel Carter, a 35-year-old single father who worked long shifts as a maintenance worker and sometimes took weekend cleaning jobs to support his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Daniel had no idea that the woman standing on his doorstep was one of the city's most powerful CEOs. He only knew that his landlord had asked whether he could temporarily accommodate someone through the foundation. He agreed because the extra money would help cover Lily's school expenses. If you believe kindness can change a person's life and that everyone deserves a second chance, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to SoulTales. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories of kindness, courage, and second chances to you. Victoria walked inside carrying 2 designer suitcases and immediately noticed everything that money could not hide. The living room was small. The couch had been repaired more than once. Lily's drawings covered one wall, and there were grocery receipts held beneath a magnet on the refrigerator because Daniel carefully tracked every dollar. Victoria tried not to show her disappointment, but Lily saw it. Instead of becoming offended, the little girl simply picked up a stuffed rabbit and showed Victoria the tiny blanket her father had sewn for it. Victoria smiled politely, but something inside her tightened. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had proudly shown her something that had cost almost nothing. The first week was difficult. Victoria was accustomed to silence, private elevators, spotless kitchens, and meals prepared by someone else. Daniel's home was filled with ordinary sounds. Lily laughed loudly. The washing machine rattled. Daniel sometimes came home exhausted with grease on his hands. One evening, Victoria complained about the noise while trying to finish a business report on her laptop. Daniel looked at her calmly and explained that this was simply their life. He wasn't wealthy enough to create silence whenever someone wanted it. Victoria expected an argument, but instead Daniel quietly apologized and moved Lily into the kitchen to finish her homework. That night, Victoria heard Daniel coughing from the hallway. She opened her door and found him sitting at the table, trying to calculate whether he could afford Lily's school trip after paying the electricity bill and buying her medicine. Victoria had spent more on a handbag that month than Daniel was trying to save for his daughter's entire semester. Yet he wasn't complaining. He simply erased one expense from the list and kept calculating. Something about that moment stayed with her. As the days passed, Victoria began seeing things she had never noticed before. Daniel woke before sunrise to prepare Lily's breakfast, worked all day, came home to repair broken things, helped with homework, and still found enough energy to listen when his daughter talked about her dreams. He never talked about being poor. He never asked Victoria for favors. He simply did what needed to be done. Then Lily became sick. It was only a fever, but Daniel panicked because he had to choose between missing a shift and losing a day's wages. Victoria watched him standing beside Lily's bed, holding a cold cloth against her forehead. The same man who looked strong enough to carry the entire world seemed helpless beside his sleeping child. Without saying anything, Victoria drove them to the clinic and paid the bill anonymously. When Daniel discovered what she had done, he didn't thank her with excitement. He simply looked at her and told her that kindness was not about money. It was about showing up when someone needed you. Those words struck deeper than he could have known. For the first time, Victoria began helping without trying to control the outcome. She cooked dinner one evening, burned the first batch of food, and made Lily laugh until she nearly cried. She started sitting at the kitchen table during homework. She learned that Daniel liked his coffee too strong and Lily hated broccoli. She discovered that the house she had initially considered unbearable had a warmth her penthouse had never possessed. But just when Victoria began feeling safe, the truth about the corporate scandal came out. The real culprit was arrested after investigators found financial records proving Victoria had been framed. Her company called her back immediately. Her position, wealth, penthouse, and old life were waiting for her. Everyone expected Victoria to return exactly as she had been. On the 29th day, she packed her suitcases. Lily stood silently in the hallway, trying not to cry. Daniel told Victoria that she deserved her old life back and that he was genuinely happy for her. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't even hint that he wanted her to choose him. That was when Victoria realized something that frightened her more than losing everything. She didn't want to leave. The next morning, Victoria walked into the kitchen and saw Daniel preparing Lily's breakfast. Sunlight came through the small window, falling across the worn table where they had shared meals, arguments, laughter, and quiet moments. Her expensive world suddenly seemed strangely empty compared with this imperfect little room. She looked around at the repaired couch, Lily's drawings, the mismatched cups, and the tiny kitchen where she had burned pancakes only days earlier. Then she understood that home had never been a place with expensive furniture or breathtaking views. Home was the place where someone noticed when you were tired. It was where a child could laugh without fear. It was where kindness existed even when money didn't. Victoria didn't throw away her career. She returned to her company, exposed the people responsible for the fraud, and rebuilt the business with a completely different philosophy. But she changed one thing that mattered most. She stopped measuring success only by numbers. Months later, Victoria stood outside Daniel's house holding a set of keys. She had bought the property, but not to take it away from him. She had purchased it so the landlord could never force Daniel and Lily out again. Daniel stared at her in disbelief while Lily ran into Victoria's arms. Victoria smiled through tears and told them that she had spent her entire life trying to build a bigger house, a bigger company, and a bigger name. But 30 days in their tiny home had taught her something none of those things ever could. A house becomes a home when people inside it make room for your heart. And that little blue door house remained their place, not because Victoria needed somewhere to live, but because after years of searching, the woman who had owned almost everything had finally discovered the one thing money could never buy: belonging. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes people can change, and subscribe to SoulTales. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can give another person isn't money or success. It is simply making them feel that they finally belong somewhere. And before the story ends, I have one special request. Comment home below if you believe that kindness, love, and second chances can turn even the loneliest place into a family. Because sometimes, the person who enters your life as a temporary guest becomes the reason you finally understand what home was supposed to feel like.